Hello, welcome to Critic.Reading.Writing. My name is Ato Quayson, and I'm a professor of English at Stanford University. Prior to Stanford, I had teaching positions at the University of Cambridge in the UK, the University of Toronto in Canada, and then at NYU before I arrived at Stanford. I'm delighted to be using this channel, Critic Reading Writing, to share with you my reflections on literature and the humanities at the present time. Some might wonder why literature and the humanities now? And there are many reasons why it is important to engage with the humanities. And I shall explain some of the reasons in a moment. For now, let me just tell you what I'm going to be doing in the various episodes that I'll be sharing with you. I want to use literature as a conduit for touching on various subject matters: love, the scariness of life, tragedy, the beauty of life, aesthetic values, and also to touch on different disciplines and areas of discourse, such as philosophy, history, archaeology, architecture, and various others. However many areas I touch upon, I will always be returning to literature. So literature will be our key, our paradigm that allows us to do several things, but always return to the domain of literature and writing. I will also be essentially comparative. And by comparative, I mean that I do not restrict myself to any single tradition, national or otherwise. And so in the following episodes, you will get a little bit from African literature. I come from Africa, a wonderful place called Ghana. But you also get a good doses of Shakespeare, of Aeschylus and Sophocles, of Toni Morrison, of Salman Rushdie, and of many other writers who have been an inspiration for me. The question now is, why literature? Why the humanities? Why now? There's many reasons why literature and humanities now. And I want to share with you three main things. The first thing about literature is that it expands not just our imagination, which is obvious for anyone who is well read, but also our capacity to find attachment with others. So that what literature does is that it provides us with a sentimental education that allows us to be fine-tuned to the lives of others with whom we may never interact. And so I read Japanese literature and I feel for the Japanese characters. I read Spanish literature and I feel for the characters who are Spanish. I read Colombian literature and I feel moved by the plight of people in Colombia. The point about literature as a sentimental education is that literature provides us what might be described as moral vitamins. And in the provision of moral vitamins, like real vitamins, you have to read a lot of it and think about it all the time. One of the fascinating things about literature for people who read it seriously and consider it a source of moral vitamins is that people who read literature tend to have lots of anecdotes. The anecdotes act as hooks upon which they hang various kinds of lessons. And so you'll be talking to someone and they'll say, I read in such a book about this very similar experience that you're sharing with me now. And by this, they will give you a piece of advice, a form of illustration. So literature provides us a reservoir of exemplars on how to gain illumination for the many baffling, exhilarating conditions that we undergo as human beings. The second value of literature is that it the second value of literature is that it gives us the capacity for contemplating doubt. Now, of course, some people will say that doubt is completely worthless. Why doubt? You need to be decisive. You need to be able to make up your mind. But in fact, much of what we undertake, many of our aspirations and ambitions are hemmed around by circumstances and conditions that we have no control of or over. And literature, good writing, gives us many examples of contingent situations. Literature gives us many examples of contingent situations, of people planning one thing and being confronted by something completely different. The idea of doubt also allows us to exercise patience in the face of the chaos and confusion that is our lives today. We are in an era of COVID-19. We're also in an era of police brutality against Black people in the United States of America. And as we know from the events following the terrible death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, this has triggered an outpouring of feeling all over the world. There were Black Lives Matter demonstrations in London, in Tokyo, in Accra, where I grew up in, and so on and so forth. And the upsurge of emotion and feeling has cut across different nationalities, ethnic groups, races, religious orientations, and so on. For some people, and I've had this question asked of me, from my non-Black friends, how does it feel like to be a Black subject in the face of this violence? And I tell them that you don't need to be a woman to stand up against abuse against women. You do not need to be a child to stand up against child abuse. The point about being confronted by such cases is that all of us, irrespective of our orientations or racial backgrounds, feel a sense of contamination. But the contamination comes from the fact that we see, for once, a blatant source of injustice. But it is an injustice that we experience as not being able to do anything about, especially as we see the terrible event unfolding on television. And this feeling of helplessness is what has galvanized us collectively and from our different backgrounds, finally to take some action. Everyone feels that now is time not to watch the tragedy unfolding on television, but to take a form of action. The point of this dramatization of the call to action is actually already provided in literature. Because as you read literature and you come to identify with the plight of others, as you read literature and you come to expand your imaginative capacities for being in different times and different realms, as you read literature to shape your sentimental education, you also come to confront the nature of doubt, the nature of unanticipated contingencies, and the ways in which these contingencies force us beyond ourselves. So you may be planning something or one thing or the other, or you may have your own particular ambitions, and the contingent emergence of the suffering of others forces you to stop thinking about your own self momentarily and to think about the plight of others. This is something that both COVID and the events following George Floyd's killing have exposed to us. So that is the second value of literature. The literature gives us a capacity to contain and reflect upon doubt. The final thing that literature gives us is what to put it very simply, to open a book is as standing before the gates of a new city. And as in the front of the gates of a new city, you have the capacity not just of knowing new things, of meeting strangers, of getting lost sometimes, as we do in different cities, but also the capacity to discover yourself. There are things in literature that tell you about yourself that you did not even know before. And so literature then institutes a process not just of the discovery of the world away from you, but also of the world that is resident inside of you. So it's the world inside coupled to the world outside. And so critic reading writing will be devoted to exploring and reflecting upon these and various other things. The episodes will be clustered or thematized under different rubrics. And so I'll deliver a series of episodes, say, on the concept of tragedy, and another set of episodes on the relationship between cities and literature. In other words, urban humanities. Another set of episodes on the question of embodiment and disability. So disability in literature, which will be very useful for people interested in the medical humanities. There are other times when I'll talk about the representation of fashion, of aesthetic judgment in literature. There are many, many different things that we'll be touching upon. And I'm really excited to be embarking with you on this magnificent journey. Thank you very much.